Let's get one thing straight right now. That leather-bound, beautifully photographed cookbook on your shelf? It's lying to you. Not maliciously, of course. It means well. But it's perpetuating a myth that has crippled home cooks for generations. The idea that a great meal is born from a list of ingredients and a set of instructions. Following a recipe to the letter will produce a dish, certainly, but it will rarely produce a great dish. Because recipes are static roadmaps, while cooking is a dynamic living process, they can't account for the unique variables in your kitchen. The humidity in the air, the actual temperature of your so-called medium-high heat. Your tomatoes are just a bit less sweet than the author's. True culinary mastery isn't about mimicry, it's about understanding. The real secret has very little to do with secret family recipes or expensive single-purpose gadgets. It has everything to do with science. I'm talking about chemistry and physics. Cooking isn't magic, it's a series of controlled chemical reactions. When you understand what's supposed to happen when heat meets protein or when acid collides with fat, you are no longer a slave to the printed page. You become the master of the process. You can troubleshoot on the fly, adapt to your ingredients, and push flavors to their absolute peak, all because you know the why behind the what. Think about it. A recipe might tell you to sear the steak for 3 to 4 minutes per side, but it won't tell you the goal, the Maillard reaction, which only occurs above a certain temperature. It won't explain that a wet steak will steam instead of sear, preventing that crusty browning. Without that knowledge, you're just a timer watcher. Once you grasp the science, you're looking for visual cues and aromatic cues. You're listening for the right kind of sizzle. You're conducting an orchestra of molecules, and the symphony you're creating is pure, unadulterated flavor. So I urge you, put the cookbook down for a moment. Not forever, but just for a second. Let's peel back the curtain and look at the gears and levers working behind the scenes. We're not going to memorize complicated formulas or break out the lab coats. Unless you want to, I won't judge. We're going to explore a few simple, powerful scientific principles that will change the way you see food. By the end, you'll realize that the greatest cooking tool you'll ever own isn't a pan or a knife. It's the knowledge of how to make your ingredients do what you want them to do. That is the true path to culinary freedom. If there were a hall of fame for chemical reactions in the kitchen, the Maillard reaction would be the first ballot inductee. This, my friends, is the undisputed king of flavor. It is the beautiful, complex, and utterly delicious process responsible for the golden brown crust on a perfectly seared steak, the deep color of toasted bread, the rich aroma of roasting coffee, the savory notes in a dark beer. It is, without exaggeration, the source of hundreds of distinct flavor compounds that we perceive as roasty, nutty, savory. When people talk about developing deep flavor, they are talking about Monsieur Maillard. So what is it? Put simply, a chemical dance between amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, and reducing sugars. When these two partners meet heat, specifically above 285 degrees Fahrenheit, or 140 degrees Celsius, they begin a whirlwind romance. They rearrange into new structures, creating aromatic molecules and brown pigments called melanoidins. We've all been taught the old saying, oil and water don't mix. In the natural world, this is fundamentally true. Try shaking them up in a jar, and within moments they'll separate into two distinct layers, the less dense oil floating stubbornly on top of the water. Yet, in the culinary world, we defy this law every single day. We create creamy salad dressings, velvety mayonnaise, rich hollandaise sauce. How do we perform this kitchen alchemy? The answer is the magic of emulsification. An emulsion is a mixture of two liquids that would not normally mix, like oil and water, that is forced to stay together. The trick to creating a stable emulsion lies in a third party, an emulsifier. An emulsifier is a special type of molecule that has a unique structure. One end is hydrophilic. It loves water. The other end is hydrophobic. It hates water, but loves oil. That dual personality lets it bridge the oil and water. The emulsifier molecules surround tiny droplets of one liquid, say oil, and suspend them evenly throughout the other, say vinegar, preventing them from clumping and separating. Let's look at a classic vinaigrette. You have oil. You have vinegar, which is mostly water. Fat gets the glory for carrying flavor. Salt is the universal enhancer we can't live without. Sweetness provides comfort and pleasure. But acid? Acid is the unsung hero of the kitchen, the brilliant supporting actor that makes everyone else on stage look better. A dish without enough acid is like a photograph that's slightly out of focus. It's flat, heavy, and muddled. A squeeze of lemon, a splash of vinegar, or a dollop of yogurt can instantly bring a dish to life, making flavors sharper, brighter, and more distinct. It cleanses the palate and cuts through richness, preventing a meal from feeling cloying or one note. Scientifically speaking, what we perceive as sour is our tongue's reaction to the presence of hydrogen ions, which are released by acidic ingredients like citrus, vinegar, wine. Spices are often treated like magical dust, sprinkled into a pot with a hope and a prayer that they'll somehow create deliciousness. We follow recipes that call for a pinch of this or a teaspoon of that, but we rarely stop to think about what spices are actually doing. Spices are not just about adding a singular flavor, like making something taste like cumin or oregano. They are about creating complexity, depth, and aromatic harmony. They are chemical compounds, often volatile oils, that interact with each other and with the other ingredients in the dish to build a sophisticated flavor profile. Thinking about spices requires moving beyond a simple list and into the realm of a balanced equation. One of the most important transformations for spices happens when they are introduced to fat and heat, a process called blooming. Many of the most potent flavor compounds in dried spices are fat-soluble, not water-soluble. This means their flavors will be much more fully expressed when they are first cooked in a fat like oil or butter, rather than being thrown directly into a watery soup or stew. When you bloom spices, you're using the hot fat to extract those aromatic oils, making them more fragrant and available to season the entire dish. This is why many recipes for curries or chili begin by toasting the spice blend in oil before any liquids are added. It's a foundational step that builds a much deeper flavor base. Furthermore, spices can be used to create balance. They aren't just about adding heat or a specific note. Think about a complex curry powder or a mole sauce. So, here we are. We've debunked the myth of the all-knowing recipe. We've stared into the flavor gap and diagnosed why our home cooking sometimes falls flat. Maillard reaction, emulsions, the power of acid, the complex language of spices. The journey through the science of cooking isn't about memorizing jargon or becoming a chemist. It's about understanding a handful of core principles that govern how food transforms. Shift from follower to explorer. The true secret is the consistent application of this knowledge. When a chef steps up to a stove, they think like a scientist. How do I maximize the Maillard reaction on the skin without overcooking the breast? What fat will carry the flavor of my spices most effectively? What acidic element will I use at the end to balance the richness and brighten the final dish? They're constantly running a scientific checklist in their head, making small adjustments based on what they see, smell, and taste. This isn't an innate talent. It's a practiced skill built on a foundation of understanding these reactions. You now have the keys to this kingdom. The next time you step into your kitchen, don't just reach for a recipe. Reach for these principles. When you're about to sear a piece of meat, remember to pat it bone dry. Whisk in hand. Add an emulsifier. Build a creamy vinaigrette drop by drop. When your stew tastes heavy and dull, don't just add more salt. Reach for a splash of vinegar or a squeeze of lemon. Taste constantly. Question everything. Ask why at every step of the process. Your kitchen is no longer just a place to assemble meals. It is your personal laboratory for flavor. Ultimately, cooking is a conversation between you and your ingredients. The principles of science are the language you use to have that conversation. By understanding them, you can coax out the best flavors, create the most pleasing textures, build dishes that are balanced, exciting, deeply satisfying. You are no longer bound by the rigid instructions of others. You have the power to innovate, to correct mistakes, to consistently create food that tastes amazing. You don't need a taller hat or a fancier restaurant. You just need to embrace the science, and you will become the master of your own delicious domain. Now go cook something.